All right, good Shabbos. Good to see you guys at shul. Now, how many of you ever keep a bottle of old fine whiskey or fine wine or champagne locked away in a cupboard for a big future special occasion? How many of you plan ahead for this? How many of your parents used to do this? And then, one day when you reach that special occasion, then they decide to pop it, whether it be at your wedding or at your first child or a graduation or anything like that. Yeah, any of you guys do that? I don't do it, but I felt yesterday. There we go. If you guys need some special bottles, you go back to Godfrey. He's got you covered. Yesterday, I felt like I needed a bottle to celebrate a major milestone in my life, because yesterday, Judah graduated from class Gimel. It was fantastic. He graduated from the class, and he even got an end-of-year report. Yes, for preschool, an end-of-year report. So we had to see how many smiley faces he got and how many stars he got, etc., etc. He didn't get any teardrops, so that's good. So he's made it through his first, I want to say, year of school, even though it's only been about 2 months. We probably can't read anything into the report. But the fact that I could actually receive a report from my own child, it filled me with so much pride, so much nachas. I was so proud of my child that he got his report, that I wanted to pop a bottle of champagne. And I picked him up from school. I was playing the song for him. School's out for the sun. We were celebrating. I took him to get an ice cream, because obviously you can't have champagne. And it was a big deal for me. I don't think he even knows what's going on. But for me, it was a big deal. My child's out of school for this year, and he got a report card, and it all looks good. It's passed with flying colors. So Baruch Hashem, I was able to celebrate that. And I think many of us, when we see our end-of-year reports for our kids, hopefully it brings you a lot of pride to show you that what you've done this year and all this time that you've invested in them actually paid off. Because let's be honest, we invest a lot into our children, whether it be finances, time, effort, our tears. There's a lot of things that we invest into our children. But for the most part, it's very hard to know if any of the stuff that we invest into our children actually sticks and actually makes an impact on their life. It's not like at school you actually get a report card. In life, it's a little bit different. But every now and then we see glimpses of our parenting and this investment that we made in our children. We see it being paid off. And we see that happen in this week's parasha as well. Because there's no end-of-year report card when it comes to life that we as parents can see in our children. We only see it in small glimpses. So in this week's parasha, of course, it's the famous parasha Vayigash, where Joseph reveals himself to his brothers. He says, Ani Yosef, I am your brother Joseph. And they're in complete shock. And they say, what? They don't know what's going on. And he celebrates with them. And eventually he sends them back home to go fetch his father. Because he asks, is my father still alive? And he wants to go fetch his father ASAP right now. So what does he do? He sends them back to go fetch his father with a whole ton of gifts. Gifts upon gifts upon gifts. To go and give it to his father. And when he sends these gifts, our commentators tell us that every one of these gifts isn't just for the sake of giving something, but each one of these gifts actually communicates a message that he is sending to his father. Because, just like his brothers, they didn't originally believe that he was actually Joseph. Like, hey, man, if it quacks like a duck, then maybe it is a duck. But you don't look like a duck at all. You look like an Egyptian. You don't look like the Joseph that we sold off. You are viceroy. It's a weird word, eh? Viceroy. I think that word only exists because of the Bible, because of Joseph's story. The viceroyal. He was the viceroy of Egypt. Little old Joseph that they used to mock and throw into a pit. They couldn't believe it. So he decides he's going to send these gifts to his father, and each gift is supposed to communicate something to his father as proof that he is, in fact, his long-lost child, Yosef, who, as we know, Yosef Hatzari. So he sends a bunch of stuff. For example, we spoke about this last year, that he sends a bunch of wagons, which in Hebrew is called agulot. And why does he send the wagons? We studied this last year. That the word agulot sounds a lot, it's got the exact same Hebrew letters as the word egla for egla arufa. Remember, to remind his father that just before he disappeared all those many years ago, what was he doing in the house with his father? They were studying the Torah, and they were studying specifically the commandment of the egla arufa. So that's a message that he sent to his father to say, it is really me. Look at all these agalot that I am sending to you. So that's the one thing he sends. Another thing that he sends is he sends about 10 female donkeys carrying food, grains, and all sorts of stuff to his father, so his father can know that he's going to look after him during this famine. It reminds him of the dream that he had when he was a child. He told his father about all the other stalks of grain that would bow down to him. So he's telling his father, it is truly I, it is me, Joseph. Right? You are Jacob, the one who was the dreamer. I am Joseph, the one who interprets the dreams. So even dreams have meanings, so too the gifts that I'm sending to you also has meanings as well. But then he sends another thing. He sends 10 male donkeys, and the Torah says, carrying the Tuva Mitzrayim, the best of Egypt. Now, what is the best of Egypt? Talmud asks the question, trying to figure out this. What is the best of Egypt? What do you guys think Egypt is known for? What can they export? Can't export pyramids and mummies. No one wants that. What is the best of Egypt? I was thinking about South Africa. What's the best thing we export? And at the moment, it looks like Omicron. We have the potential to cure this whole COVID thing all over the world, right? Friday, we've got some good news. It doesn't make people sick at all. So now, instead of locking us down, they should actually invite us into the country so we can go spit on them, spread the thing, so we can get rid of this thing. But Egypt, what is the best of Egypt? The Talmud asks this very question, and it gives us two opinions from two rabbis, and Rashi quotes these two opinions in his commentary this week as well. So the first opinion says, what he sent, the best of Egypt, was split peas. Split peas. And it makes sense because Egypt was known for its legumes and its nuts and all these things, right? When we were leaving Egypt a few parashas from now, we started complaining about how we miss the good cucumbers and all these legumes that we used to eat back there in Egypt. So split peas seems to make sense. But like I said, every one of these gifts had a reason for it. What is the message he was sending to his father? Well, why didn't he send whole peas? Why did he send split peas? This is what the Talmud says. It says the reason why he sent split peas is to communicate to his father, who of course has been mourning ever since he lost his son. For how many years has he been mourning? He was saying to his father, don't be distressed about the fact that me and you were split from each other. This was meant to happen because God had a plan all along. It's the same message that he communicates to his brothers this week as well. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. It is not your fault. It was part of God's plan. So that's why he sent these split peas to his father to comfort his father Jacob, who of course has been mourning now nonstop all these years since his son had disappeared. So that's the first opinion that's given. The second opinion, listen to this, is that the best of Egypt refers to aged wine, very old wine. Okay, now I don't think Egypt was known for winemaking. If anything, Canaan, the land of Canaan, is known for winemaking, right? But Pharaoh, we do know, had some very deep wine cellars. He even had his own cupbearer, of course, who Joseph came across not too long ago. So they must have had wine there. And the commentators try and figure out, why would he have sent aged wine? So one commentator comes along and tells us the reason for this is because he knows that his father kept all the mitzvot of the Torah before the Torah was even given. And one of the things about wine is that you're not allowed to partake of wine that was used in the process of idolatry. Forbidden to take part of that wine. So his father wasn't able to take part of wine in any way. But he knew, working in the palace there of Pharaoh, he knew that there was a law in Egypt that you're not allowed to use wine in the act of idolatry. So he knew that this wine was kosher for Jacob. Kosher l'Israel, right? So he sent him a bunch of wine because of that. The Talmud also points out another reason as to why he specifically sent to him a bunch of wine, because of the fact that he was mourning ever since Joseph was sold off by his brothers. And when he was sold off by his brothers, Jacob made a vow to God. What vow did he make? A Nazirite vow. All these years, he decided to become a Nazirite in his mourning, hoping that he would be comforted for the loss of his beloved son, Joseph. So Joseph sent this to him. And the Midrash actually goes on to tell us that even Joseph himself actually took a Nazirite vow as well. And it actually says that all of the other 11 brothers, they themselves were also taking this Nazirite vow. And that's why in last week's parasha, or in the beginning of this week's parasha, when he has the meal with his brothers, he gives them wine so that they can finally stop mourning with their father and start rejoicing because now he has been found, to break that Nazirite vow. So he sends his father a bunch of wine so he can break his Nazirite vow, be comforted from the mourning, and celebrate as he comes down into Egypt to live in the wonderful land of Goshen. Okay, so why specifically do our commentators tell us it has to be old wine? Why did he send old wine? I think the full phrase is, Rashi says he sent him old wine because old people enjoy it. Why specifically must it be old? Why so important? What's so important about the fact that it has to be old? What is the message that Joseph is trying to get across here? So the commentators tell us the reason why this happened is because Joseph is sending the message to his father that he had actually been holding on to this very bottle of wine, or this casket of wine that he was sending, 10 donkeys full, a lot of wine. He was holding on to that wine from the day that he arrived in Egypt. So, one commentator actually suggests that when he was taken as a slave, the very first job that he got there was he went to go work in the vineyard. And what he did was every now and then he would take some of the wine for himself and he'd keep it stashed away in the cupboard for one day in the future when he could celebrate. There's many stories of people that do this, people that have made amazing breakthroughs. Is it over there? This one's over there. There's many people that have made breakthroughs where they went and bought something to celebrate before they even made the breakthrough because they believed so much in themselves and their own ability. Joseph did this. He's been gathering this wine since long, long ago because he knew a day would come when he would be reunited with his beloved father. And this is why in this week's parasha, he sends the old wine to his father to show him as a message that he is still holding on to the stuff that he learned by his father as a child. And we learn this, funny enough, from the Pirkei Avot. The Pirkei Avot tells us a little bit about this as well. There's a famous Mishnah in the Pirkei Avot from Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir who says, don't look at a container, rather look at what it contains. That's funny, the word that's used there in the Hebrew, I guess it must be Mishnaic Hebrew, is the word kan-kan. Don't look at the can-can, look what's inside the can-can. Don't look at the bottle, but look at the contents of the bottle. He says, for a new bottle may contain old wine, and an old bottle may just be empty. So what is that Mishnah communicating to us? That means that even a young man who looks like a new bottle, it's only come lately, may have within him much Torah and much Ruach. Don't judge a book by its cover. And it was the same with Joseph, who his brothers didn't even recognize because he looked so different. How did Joseph look? New. He was wearing the newest modern fashion of the day. Right? He had his hair like this, and he had that, what's that thing called, the trash bag look that people are having nowadays, and he was wearing the pants down here by his knees, etc., etc. Joseph looked like a new bottle. His brothers couldn't even believe it was him. But he said, don't worry about the fact that it's a new bottle. Look what's inside. The wine that's inside is old, aged wine. So the message he was sending to his father is that I have not changed in the inside. I still have that old wine that you taught me as a child. I still have that old Torah that you taught me as a child before I disappeared. So there's a few lessons for us in this story as well, at least 3 lessons. First of all, there's a lesson for us as parents, those of us who have children. This shows us the power of a parent's education towards their child. The lessons we teach our children, even at a young age, even if you don't think it's important, these lessons live with our children forever throughout their lives. And it has the power to strengthen our children and help them to get through life's challenges. Similarly, the things we do wrong to our children at a young age might live with them forever as well. So we need to be very careful about what we teach our children, even at a young age, even if they're in preschool, where that report actually means nothing, just a bunch of smiley faces. Even then, what you teach your child stays with them. All the effort, all the energy and the investment we put into our children will one day show on a report card of their entire life, of what they become. We have a massive impact on them. Just this morning, 6 a.m., Judah woke me up to play cricket in our hallway. So we were working on his cover drives this morning. So one day when he's older, God willing, we'll be doing cover drives for the Proteas. Hopefully that lesson stays with him. What we teach our children at a young age stays with them forever. The second lesson we can learn from the story is for us ourselves. Every one of us sitting here is a child of 2 parents, right? No one here was born in a test tube, right? We all have parents. So for us as well, we need to think back at what our parents instilled in us as children. Even if you had lousy parents, they taught you to clean yourself, to bath yourself once a week, to brush your teeth. Every single person that has parents can have something that they've learned from their parents. We need to take those lessons and hold on to those lessons from our parents. Because we prayed it just this morning as we started our prayer service. We quoted Proverbs chapter 1 that says, listen, my son, to your father's instruction and do not forsake your mother's teaching. Let the Torah be my faith and the Almighty God my help. So we also have to think about what our parents taught us and make them proud, whether they're here or not here today. We've got something we can add to our report card that they've taught us in the past. And then the third lesson we can learn from the story is lessons as disciples of Yeshua. Because what was Yeshua's very first breakthrough miracle? He turned water to wine. Life of the party. Today he would make a killing with that there. How much money would you make today if you could do that? He turned water to wine. Why did he do that? Just because it was a funny magic trick? A wedding trick that he was trying to show off to entertain the bride and the groom? No. There was a reason for it. Just like all the gifts that Joseph sent to his father had meaning behind it, so too all the miracles Yeshua performed had meaning behind it. Right? He cured the blind people to say that this generation is blind. He cured the deaf to say the generation is deaf, etc., etc. Every miracle was there for a reason. Now, why did he then turn the water into wine? Because that very first miracle happened at a wedding banquet. It's supposed to be imagery for us for the great final banquet of the Messianic era, where we will sit with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and drink wine that has been preserved since when? The foundations of creation. That is the kind of wine we're going to drink. And what Yeshua did at that wedding banquet over there was, we've got this famous apostolic midrash that says he actually went and fetched this wine from the Messianic era, brought it to that wedding, and gave those people a taste of the Messianic era even then, to say to them, hey, the Messianic era is at hand. So much so that the people that tasted the wine said to the wine master, Master, you have kept the best wine for last. This is crazy. You're supposed to give the best wine first when everyone is still sober. But he kept it for last. And then what happens? Yeshua's mother Mary, she starts pestering him, saying, hey, why don't you reveal yourself to the people who you are? I know that angel told me that you're the promised Messiah. Why don't you reveal it to them? Sound familiar? This week's parasha. Joseph revealing himself to his brothers. But Yeshua says to her, woman, it is not yet my time. My time has not yet come. He's keeping that wine for a future date, a big celebration. Because remember, at the final Seder, just the night before Yeshua was crucified, the same thing happened, right? He said, I will not drink of this wine again until it is fulfilled in my Father's kingdom. For all intents and purposes, Yeshua took a Nazirite vow. He said, I'm not touching wine again until it is fulfilled. I'm saving these wine bottles for the big celebration that is coming up. And it's very interesting that every Pesach, we actually practice this very same thing. Because we start off with a bang on Pesach, we have 2 big cups of wine, and we're getting very happy, and we start singing some songs. And then we have to wait for what feels like an eternity until we finally have the 3rd and 4th cup of wine. The 3rd cup of wine, of course, was the one that Yeshua took, and he said, this is my body that is given for you. It's the cup of the new covenant. And the 4th cup is the wine of blessing, the one that we save for the Birkat Hamazon. What do we know about that? It's a foreshadowing of that great banquet that we will have one day with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And they will ask around the table, who is going to say the grace of the meals for us? And we're going to go through the whole line. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Joshua, all these guys. And eventually, the Messiah is the one who's going to lead us in the Birkat Hamazon at the end of that meal. It's also a long wait before we can finally have that great wine and celebrate. So what Yeshua is doing is that he too is holding aside for us a very special bottle of wine for a great future event. Our graduation from the Olam Hazeh, from this world, into the Olam Haba, into the world to come. Then we get to pop the cork of that wine as well and celebrate. All hidden in this week's parasha. So I hope you guys are encouraged by these lessons. It encourages you as, first of all, parents in what we teach our children and how it's long lasting. And one day the old wine will come back and we will be rewarded for what we taught our children. And I pray that it will be encouraging for you as children of your own parents to remind yourself of what your parents taught you and to give thanks for the things that they've instilled in your life. And thirdly, I hope this will encourage you as disciples of Yeshua as we wait for the final redemption, the day when we can finally partake of that very old aged wine. And all that's left to say now is L'chaim. Shabbat shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.